Oh no, the interview. I was like,
I think my face, I
Yes,
got so bad.
Bonnie's on my side.
I think my face broke. I got sick.
yeah,
I got also, I hate you. You know why?
I wasn't listening to you guys, I was trying to get my next test, and then when you're talking about all the things that matter. So I was like, wait, she said this.
I believe with really two really good ones. Because she's not coming.
All right, let's get started. I will still go in and see your thesis statements and your outlines. I looked at a couple yesterday, but today I always prioritize those. So you'll get feedback from me if you've resubmitted it. You'll get feedback from me by the end of the day today, by the end of the school day. And then you can always just keep resubmitting until you get full points, because it'd be a good idea to get full points on that assignment before you start writing. Last time you were practicing like synthesizing with like small quotations, taking a big quotation and narrowing it down to mostly paraphrasing with small quotations, right? That was something we were sort of working on at the end of class. I'm trying to get a gauge of where we were at this. Okay, cool. So today, we could keep talking about American Dream stuff, but I thought that it would be more useful actually for us to have like maybe a more like controversial topic, so that I can show you how we can use multiple sources within one paragraph. So part of a synthesis essay is not just to use the sources to back you up, but to also show the way that the sources compare and contrast. And I always say that the sources are in conversation with each other. That's kind of how you're seeing it. So it's almost like everybody, like you can pretend that all different sources are in a room and they're all talking together, and you have your own point of view. And it's important that you get your point of view out. You can see yourself as having, you know, the most correct point of view, right? But in order to clearly state your point of view, it's a good idea to acknowledge what everybody else in the conversation is saying and how they're contributing not only to your point of view, but also to each other's point of view. So like, think of how this goes in a class discussion. Like, Noble says, I don't want to work hard, I think it's a waste. And Cameron says, well, I think working hard is really important, right? When I step into that part of the conversation, I don't want to just say, well, I think working hard is good for these reasons. Instead, I want to say, well, Noble thinks this, but Cameron thinks this, and they have these similarities in this way, but ultimately, I think that, yeah, working hard can be a waste in some jobs, but most often it is a good thing, and here's why. Does that make sense, how you're kind of like entering into that conversation, right? And so in order to do that, you can't just have one paragraph, one source, another paragraph, another source, third paragraph, another source, because then they're kind of working separately on different ideas. Instead, it's a great idea to be able to incorporate multiple sources into one paragraph. And even if those sources disagree with each other, you can still like set them up as a contrast to ultimately say where your point of view lies. So we're going to do that with colorblind casting. I don't know if that's a topic you guys are interested in, but it is a topic.
I am.
Okay, cool. So colorblind casting is basically when you do not consider the race of the actor when you are casting for a movie or a play. So let's say you've got a play like Hamilton, for example, and you know that everybody involved in Hamilton was actually white. I think Hamilton, like, maybe was not fully white, right?
He was just born in a different country.
His dad wasn't, okay. Anyway.
He was pretty white.
All right, he's pretty white. So instead of like only saying like, well, these original people were, I remember, maybe these original people are white, and so we need to make sure that we just have white actors for historical accuracy. Instead, colorblind casting would say, whoever is the best actor for this part, that's who we are going to cast in this role. So it could be that, for example, there's a movie called David Copperfield that came out this year or last year, and it's, you know, the kid in it, David Copperfield, is a white British guy, and they hired, I think Dev Patel is Indian. Or is he Pakistan? He's Indian. So they hired Dev Patel to be in that role because they felt like Dev Patel is the best actor for that role. And it doesn't matter. They don't address the fact that he is Indian in the movie at all. They just sort of move along as though he was the character, you know? It can also work the other way, where in a movie with somebody of half Asian descent, of the descendants, the character was supposed to be half Asian, and Emma Stone was cast in that role. So it can work both ways in terms of like getting people, racial minorities into
Didn't Matt
roles.
Damon do that in, like the Great Wall?
So I looked into that. And I think he's supposed to be white.
I never watched it. I just saw like him dressed as an archer in China. It's like the Great Wall.
No, I think what they did was, it's kind of like The Last Samurai thing, where they center the story of a white guy when they're talking about building the Great Wall. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Did you have a?
I did have a
Yeah.
comment. So for specifically for Hamilton though, so I don't know if it counts as colorblind because he specifically chose no white actors, which like I have mixed feelings on like doing that, but I think the point was that he wanted to show America is also minorities. So that's
Yeah.
why there's like Filipino people and like Dominican Republic people, and like he himself is Hispanic, you know? So like it was an interesting take on it. But it kind of represented like founding fathers being like different nationalities coming to America.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting. But like specifically Hamilton was one where they said color, like I thought it was very color aware casting.
Interesting. So like it doesn't quite count as colorblind
Yeah.
casting. Yeah, okay, cool.
Versus something like the new Little Mermaid.
Yeah, great point. There was a movie from my childhood, I'm not sure you remember it, that I loved. It was a Cinderella representation with Brandy. Yeah, and I remember as a kid being like, okay, so Cinderella's black, her mom is black, her dad is white, and the prince is Asian. And it was like, to my little mind, it like blew my mind. I was just like, what? It's like everybody is just whatever. So anyway, I'm gonna actually just have you discuss this in small groups before we discuss it as a class. So talk with the people next to you. We're gonna spend about 5 minutes or so talking through these questions. So talk with the people next to you about what you think about this idea.
Okay, so I actually just saw
Okay, and I will be right back. I gotta get the sources.
So, I don't have a problem.
Yeah, I agree.
Because that takes a lot more
I got my pharmacy yesterday.
but like also.
Yeah, all these.
It's not just.
And dad, like, Two thousand years of the hair.
If you don't get it, retake it. How was Lisa tonight? Really?
Last time I did all the math,
Just a little bit weird, actually. I was like, yeah, no. I was like, no, very God.
I think
It's a little too much for me. I was like, oh, wow.
Were you able to get through all the questions?
Oh, yes.
Okay, let's talk now, just generally. We have to kind of, I know every class we have the tendency to talk a lot, so we gotta cut it pretty short, but I want to know kind of your thoughts now. What do you think about this idea of color body casting? Ali Rose?
Okay, so we were talking about how if it matters where their cultural identity comes from, if it matters to their character, then like it should be like the right color, it should be the right culture, because that's really important for correct representation.
Uh-huh.
But is the character, is it driven by like the color of the person? Then maybe not, it's not as important.
Okay, that's interesting. So like in the case of Hamilton, for example, a lot of those characters in that movie owned slaves. And so their race was actually, their race was actually integral then to kind of their place in history.
Like it was
So
weird to
do you
see
think that that was a bad idea because their whiteness was sort of integral to who they were, or?
the David
Hamilton's
Diggs
more
line.
fictional, honestly.
Okay.
It's not a realistic like
Yeah.
representation. And so like what you said, representing like the colors of American melting pot.
Yeah.
Really critical.
Okay, so then it's really important that you also consider the purpose and the themes of it. So even if race and ethnicity is integral to a certain character in some way, you can flip how that is integral. Because in this case, then it would be integral that they aren't white. Okay, got it. Lexi.
So that it's important. So colorblind casting can't be very limited. Also, it's very, very specific for it, or else there could be a lot of trouble. So the main character ought to stay the same. So we like some of the big characters. We said like Harry Potter, and Harry Potter is described multiple times as being, light skinned, messy black hair. Very skinny. So if we got like an actor of a different race, then people would be like, oh, this is just some guy. This isn't Harry Potter. And Sarah gives the example of the Little Mermaid. Yeah. And how we all grew up with Little Mermaid being a white mermaid with bright red hair. And then in the live action, they did colorblind casting. Yes, they did do colorblind casting, and they cast a black woman with dark hair, as opposed to the red that we're used to. Yeah. She had it in braids. People were upset about it. Like, this isn't Ariel.
Yeah.
And so, if it's a main character or like obviously biological family of the main character, they ought to be the race they were written as.
There's a term that we use in film called suspending your disbelief, you know? So it's like that by taking a character that's so well known and changing something that feels like really visible, it might be a way of disrupting, like you're suturing into the film because you can't suspend your disbelief anymore. They're actually, when they cast the play for The Cursed Child, they cast a Black Hermione, and there was like conversations about that. You can also think about like kind of the outrage that happens, over movies like The Little Mermaid too, and maybe part of the colorblind casting limits that you have to think about, or the way that you have to think about it is like, how could the reaction to this harm the actor too? Because the actress that was cast as Ariel like was very much harmed by all the vitriol that came her way because of that casting. Yeah.
Well, I took it, so, maybe it's a, oh, like, I really didn't focus on, like, their own stories and stuff. So that's not like Christian factor, like, the one who made it. But also, like, the shows, movies, especially, it's not bad, like, experts. I know you go to like the movie and stuff like that, the one after that. But like, there's not like when you know describes it, you can be like, okay, even if it's like
Yeah, good. Yeah, this happens, I'm thinking of like when women are cast in like what were male roles before, like for example, there's a version of The Tempest where Prospero is almost always father, but they cast Helen Mirren as Prospero and turned Prospero into a woman. Or they did this with like, remember Lady Ghostbusters? I don't know, were you guys too young to remember the crazy
No,
hate over Lady Ghostbusters?
I didn't see hate over it, but also like they cut them out. Like I didn't see them like replacing the original people, so I was fine with it. Because like they
Yeah.
aren't playing, they're not Zimmerman.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. Yeah, that doesn't quite count as colorblind casting, but it's maybe, to speak to Cameron's point, it's good to adapt as a culture then, to see different people in different roles and to like become used to that too. Yeah. No?
So we kind of talked about a few things, but going back to Hamilton, we said like in musicals and stuff, there should be more leeway because there's a lot more that comes into consideration. But specifically with Hamilton, they play into Black culture. So there's like R&B and hip hop in this
Yeah, I
musical.
can't imagine.
So it'd be
that
really
for
hard to,
white
do a bunch of white guys and like,
So rough.
like,
Yeah.
but I also think specifically historically accurate things. So I don't have a problem with The Little Mermaid, it's fantasy. And also with Harry Potter, I feel like you could have just described an Asian. Like you could like, not to like stereotype, but I'm saying like, there is an Asian that could fulfill that role, or even a Black person that could fulfill that role. Like with the descriptions we're given, if it makes sense for the time period, you can change the acting, casting. There was one that I know about. Henry VIII's wife got a TV show, and the lead role is Black. Like she's Black, and it's a little interesting because there were no Black people in London at the time, and like she's supposed to be Spanish, I think, for that one specifically. So it's like it will change kind of the ties and stuff. But if you look at The Little Mermaid, or even I watched the Batman last week and Jim Gordon's Black, and it's like that's not like it's fine. He played Jim Gordon better than I've seen other people play Jim Gordon. Like it shouldn't be based off of race, but there are times when and not even race, like there's a lot of different things that can play from an actor into a show that will change the style of the show. Like if you cast someone with a prosthetic leg to play, like a soccer play, like if someone with a prosthetic leg was Lionel Messi, you'd be like, wait, Lionel Messi has two legs,
Yeah, right.
it doesn't necessarily have to be race. If you look at Queen, the guy that played Freddie Mercury in the Bohemian Rhapsody, they weren't the same race, but they even like kind of look similar. But like it's hard to do the same race like all the time, But we've also seen like too many old shows where like white people play Asians, and it's like really messed up.
Or
Like,
blackface, right?
right. Blackface was a whole thing. Like that's a huge
Yeah, I have
problem.
another slide of that.
But I have a problem with people like acting like it never ever happened in Nobles, so like, it's hard to be like, oh, like that, the first time that we did Mulan, it was all white people, something like that, but like animated stories is a little leeway, musical, we decided was leeway, but historically, it should try to be accurate, at least for the sake of, like, we talked about suspending the disbelief, but it's like, you almost can't ignore that kind of thing.
Well,
And
it
only
has-
like historically accurate, like you
Right.
could do, I don't, like, a Black Cinderella is fine, because it's like, it's all fantasy.
Right.
But if you are trying to make a drama, like a period epic about Henry VIII, he should be white because he was king of the.
Well, and also not even that he was actually a real person, but also that if Henry VIII had married a Black woman, that woman would have different experiences that she was bringing into that
Yeah.
role as queen too. And so you have to kind of, there's a way that it kind of erases racial experience too, or ethnic experience.
Plus his story is a lot about like illegitimacy and stuff, and like that would be pretty easy to tell for like a Black woman, like.
Yeah, right.
So it would kind of change the story a bit.
Right. Axel?
I think that it has like three important factors that it's like a musical, and then if it has like a whole reality, which I feel like also comes back to the book, it's just like it's kind of fantastical in a way, like especially with Hamilton, like they're just singing all the time, and but then like if they have a whole reality, like they're trying to create the story as accurately as possible. It's like I feel like I can't think of an example right now, but if that's not their goal, like they're just trying to tell us an interesting story, then I feel like it can be easily
Yeah.
changed and stuff.
Yeah.
And then the last one is I feel like if it's a continuation of a story, or in some cases like a remake of a story, then I feel like it should be kept the same. Like I feel like if back to the Batman, like Jim Gordon or whatever, him changing didn't really change anything, but if they made Batman black, I feel like that would change the whole character, because the
But
whole
would
point,
that be a bad thing?
I actually don't think
In a
it would.
remake like that?
well,
In
I
this
feel like
world,
the whole point of Batman is like he's comes from like a very privileged place, and he comes from all
Yeah.
this privilege, but
Right.
like
But I don't know, it reminds me of Princess and the Frog, like, I feel like Batman, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but like, I love Batman, and so I could totally see a black Batman, and because like, he could still be from a privileged family, because he grows up in the streets of, basically Compton, so. I
It would
don't-
have
I
to
don't
have
know.
a new, yeah, it would have to have a
I
new
feel like-
makeup, yeah.
it would have to go into different directions than the
Yeah.
already white Batman.
They'd have to change
Right,
it for sure,
right.
but it's.
Idris
still-
Elba keeps wanting to play James Bond. And for
Michael
a
Keaton.
long time, Donald Glover was really wanting to play Spider-Man.
Yeah, obviously.
But we kind of got some colorblind casting with Spider-Man when I haven't seen the new ones yet, still.
What?
With Into the Spider-Verse.
What?
Wait, you haven't seen Into
Oh,
the
that's not
Spider-Verse?
No, I've
clever.
seen that one.
Michael Morales has always been he's always been what do they call it? Afro Latino. He's always been an Afro Latino.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they just wanted to finally put him on the big stage.
I see. Yeah, but
So I think that colorblind casting is great, except when it like confuses the narrative, because we were talking about with Les Mis how like I can't remember if it was little or old Eponine, but they were black, and that really confused, because it's a confusing play, and when you're switching the races of specific characters, that's really confusing.
so it was like when she was young, she was black, and then when she was old, she wasn't anymore?
Yeah, so
Oh, okay.
it's a confusing play, and that made it worse. And then another one we talked about is like history, because like if it's a war movie and you have a German playing an American like general, that
Interesting, so it's not, it's also like even like along like country boundaries. Okay.
yeah, so.
Yeah, no,
So we kind of were also talking about how like, it's like in plays and stuff like that, a lot of it is not necessarily as much trying to tell like the story as much as the themes kind of. That's kind of one of the biggest things about like the theater is like the kind of like themes that it pushes and stuff like that. Like Shakespeare, like a lot of the themes are the same, but like it's like different storylines. So I feel like in that case, it's really fun. But I feel like for like time old like classics, if it's gonna be a remake, unless they're planning on changing the story, then I would say probably keep the same like, race and stuff like that. I mean, obviously they started out with like an Asian person. But if they're gonna change the story in some way and make it their own in some way, then you can go ahead and change the actor, but when you get, a group, especially with like our coach, like that, when we have someone that we're emotionally attached to, and a character that we really resonate with, when you change that, like, for example, like with Little Mermaid, we all grew up watching like Mermaid. So unless they're planning on changing the story so that it's not the Little Mermaid anymore, I probably would say not colorblind cast it.
So partially it's about nostalgia then. Which though becomes a little problematic when we were young. When I was young, there were no characters, like, well, we got Jasmine. But before Jasmine, right, there were no characters of other race. So when we talk about like in Disney, so when we talk about like representation matters, like we have this nostalgia for what we think a Disney princess should be. I'm talking about my age here, you got your age, you guys had. You're better. You're better. But like from talking about my age, it's like maybe it's not good to keep pushing that same nostalgic feeling, you know? But that's more about a group of texts rather than one specific one.
Yeah, I think at that point also, like, those stories have already been told. So like, I feel like it doesn't necessarily.
So now we're saying stop remaking them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all getting that, stuff like that, like, you're talking about with like your age and stuff.
Yeah,
Those are just like a set point in history's films, like,
right.
now we can create more, and like, the representation is gonna be different throughout the years. because
Right.
Just with, like, political, like, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so now it's different, and so you don't have to try to make the past okay by redoing it, like, trying to keep it in now.
That's a great point. Yeah. Okay, I gotta go to just, I know a bunch of people put up their hands now, so we got, everybody with their hand up now can still talk. And then we'll move on. So Lord Kate and then Abby.
I kind of like agree a little bit with like the nostalgic sense, like Avatar: The Last Airbender, like the TV show. It was like the Fire Nation was like more Asian.
They were Inuit. It was all based on.
Yeah, it was kind of like race-based because they're like separated on like a map or whatever. And then when they made the movie, it came out and it was a lot of intermixed race throughout all the different stuff, which like, I don't know, it's part of nostalgia, also like, they get their like vintage songs or whatever from like, this person come over here. Like, it's just kind of like,
When it's about like geographical
Yeah.
boundaries, like it seems important to maintain that. Yeah, Abby.
Another thing we talked about too is how accents change things. And so it's like if you were casting what was like if they just have like an accent, we wouldn't really even notice, but if they have like a deep southern accent, then the British person, like it like overlaps really like partially. Yeah, and it's like it's confusing. And then also, my dad was telling me when he was growing up reading Harry Potter, it pronounced and
Really?
because there wasn't any movies about it.
Yeah,
There wasn't any like.
and we're not British, so we haven't
We're
heard the
not
name.
British, so we don't know how to pronounce it. And it's like, just like in an American white town of St. George, like they just pronounced it Hermione. And so the
Yeah,
movie came
perfect
out and
sense.
everyone was like, you
When
know.
it came out, they're like,
And
how
so-
dare they change it?
Yeah, so it's like, for him, he was like, why did they change it, you know? But that's kind of for us, like, if there's like a black person in the role or a person like, so we go, why did they change it? But it's really like, no, that may have been the way it was intended from that point, that like director's point of view. Or like what you create in your head, like we create our own characters. Even
Yeah,
based on like the black hair, green eyes of Harry Potter. It just kind of was based on like where you at.
Yeah, so your context is what's like sort of
Immediate to you.
I
If
get
someone
in your head.
Because someone in Britain would probably know like that's tiny and she looks like this because my
Yeah,
in the South, like even if they're wasn't like movies, they're reading a book and you like present these characters as just like actually, you know, like I don't know.
yeah, I
Have
mean,
their
it's
own
like,
perception.
it's like the way that adaptations always destroy some of our perceptions from what's based on our own context.
Have you seen Men in Tights? Dr. Moore?
Yeah,
So you know how they kind of cast that one guy and he's wearing like pump shoes and he's totally like the black
Yeah.
character because he's supposed to be the more training.
Yeah.
Like that was. I wanted to bring that up because I thought that was so
Yeah.
funny. but-
Okay, Cressida, Ali Rose and Maxwell. Sorry, no, well, it was after the cutoff. Yeah. Yeah.
What is my reaction is it doesn't have to be what I've seen in the story.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know who this activist was, so so sometimes I feel like, do you look at a red light and say, oh, there's everyone's saying so and then a little song.
Interesting. Yeah, that it could be there could be other qualities, other physical qualities that we associate with characters. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Right, which is maybe why we're thinking of fantasy and musical as being more acceptable to us. Okay, yeah, Elliot.
So like I think that like proper representation of what matters the most in the narrative is really important.
Yeah.
And so like in Sia's movie Music, have you seen that? Have you heard about it? It's the autistic one. And it's about a girl who has like she's like low functioning, like she's on the spectrum. And it's played by like that from
Oh,
she's
okay.
not autistic at all.
Yeah.
And there's huge controversy about it because one, the way they represented it was that the way they like handled her like meltdown stuff was by like shoving her to the ground and holding her down. And it represented how like not to do things and how like destructive it could be by not having like actual representation to show what is right in order.
Interesting, yeah.
And by like also having her portray like a character where like the whole movie was based on her being autistic and everyone else like dealing with and having to help her. But her not actually being autistic, she couldn't actually check in the way she didn't mean to be aggressive. So like not even aggressive, but it was
It reminds me of characters who have played mentally, or actors who have played mentally disabled characters, like DiCaprio has, Tom Hanks has, like,
Like I have a brother who's very he wouldn't understand what he was doing. And so you need it. I understand your point. Like I think it would be better to get someone who's time on something than actually understand what's going on. Or you can't actually get someone. My brother,
yeah.
and that's not a hate. Again, I have a brother who's on the spectrum, and he just wouldn't be able to understand. He's confused, he's frustrated. And just wouldn't.
right, which is a challenge if we want to make stories, for example, about disabled people or transgender people or people with learning disabilities or whatever, the amount of people that can play those roles gets really limited too. If that
So you at least have something like to actually represent what they
Yeah.
on the scale of but at least like so
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
true, but
You're
it's
an
not a-
actor
that's
for a
not a
reason.
representation. It's a representation of something in real life.
Yeah, and where do we think of, like, which categories do we think that representation, it really matters that it is the same as that on screen? Like, for Batman, does it need to be a rich guy so that he can understand, like, what it feels like to be, I mean,
Like
if he's playing Batman, he's a rich guy, but like, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really fascinating, like, which groups we, because for a long time, and even still, sexuality doesn't matter as much, like, we don't get up in arms about straight people playing gay people and gay people playing straight people as often as we do with things like disability or with things like race, which is. Okay, Maxwell, last comment.
Oh my gosh. You can't do that when you changed like the topic. I needed the.
I know.
I got like 2 sentences. Can I just 2 sentences?
After Maxwell.
Okay.
Okay.
Another thing that I was thinking of when it comes to like, especially like Disney films like Cinderella, is that Cinderella was like a story before, and Disney made their own spin on it. And so if Disney's gonna make that again, they should make it like their story. Same with the Little Mermaid, like they made that story that way. if it was a different company making The Little Mermaid, then it would be like, oh, okay, that's just, they want to put their own spin on it. But if they're like retconning kind of,
Yeah, they're like, oh, we didn't always only have white
Yeah.
characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
like, that seems weird to me if they're trying to do that.
It's almost like apologist a little bit in
Yeah.
that way. Yeah.
Ariel
I've seen
also
that.
looks like Ariel. I looked it up. She looks like white Ariel, so. I know why
Fantasy,
people are freaking out.
fantasy is so interesting with that because so many of those fairy tales come from many different cultures, right? There was an ancient Cinderella, like there was like, and all of those cultures, they kind of developed that story almost independently. So the fact that Disney chose to do the white version and then is now saying like, oh, but we're not doing that anymore. You know, it feels, I can see how that feels a little apologist. Yeah. Okay, 2 sentences. I'm gonna-
Yeah, okay, so there's a really good example of this. Have you seen Peanut Butter Falcon? Because that guy, he is very clearly on, like, he is Down syndrome. And he plays the part really well, but at the same time, there was a movie from like the early 90s or something. He was about that one savant that could memorize everything. There's no way he could have fulfilled that role
We're
himself.
talking about Dustin Hoffman
I think so.
with Rain Man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Rain Man, that was the one. So
Yeah.
there was no way they could have had someone fulfill the role that actually was Rain Man.
Yeah.
So they needed someone to step in, like radio or something. But it's really interesting, like you
The
have.
radio was not a good example. Rain Man's a better example.
Okay, Rain Man's a better, I just
Yeah.
had to do it. But
Yeah.
I think that it's really important to represent them well. With like Bohemian Rhapsody and Rocket Man, both of those gay people in real life. The people, I mean, obviously Freddie Mercury can speak, but like Elton John had no problem with a straight man playing him.
Mm.
I think that it has to do with being respected to the part more than actually being able to be a part of it.
Okay.
It was 2 run-ons.
This one, Prince of Persia.
It was like
That's the other one.
That was actually pretty
Oh.
decent.
What's the other
When
one?
I was younger.
This one is from a movie called The Descendants. She is playing someone's cat agent.
Oh,
I can see
yeah.
it. Half Japanese.
She definitely made the right scale.
George Clooney was in this one too.
Oh.
Anyway, George Clooney didn't have Japanese.
Yeah, let's be honest. Big
Okay.
not very.
So, of course it went longer than I expected, which is great. That was a good discussion. I'm gonna give you a couple sources now about this topic. Where to put them? Here they are. The first one I want to give you is from the New York Times. This is in favor of colorblind casting. They're talking about Hamilton and the Simpsons, which is interesting because it's like, it's not that real historical based one. But you had people like Hank Azaria playing an Indian shopkeeper that was, when we look back on it, very offensive, really funny, but really offensive. And they're recasting those roles so that they're not offensive apparently. Yeah, exactly. Parker gives a good demonstration of an offensive voice.
Good job, Mark. I thought that was just what it sounds like.
I mean, I'm gonna finish recasting.
I feel like birthday Lord too.
Yes,
Thank you.
I'm gonna get it in there. I forgot that we hadn't finished, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, let me finish it out.
Oh,
Reading gets set up as far as-
Use at that point. Just use at that point.
again. All right, so this one is from the New York Times. What I want you to do, trying to remember what I wanted you to do. Yes, I just want you to read it. So this New York Times article, it is yours to keep, so you can mark it up how you want, and we're just reading it.
I like how it says this part about, like, it's not. Like, I love The Rock, but he's kind of like an Egyptian god, and he's not even close.
Yeah.
Are you speaking about the mummy?
No.
It's actually, I think it happens more often in that situation.
Yeah,
because
the way that it says right here, as though Chinese is synonymous with Korean and Mexican.
Yeah. Sorry, I meant to say this is the negative colorblind casting one.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is.
Yeah, the problem with, yeah.
I agree with that. This is what I was trying to say, that like, for too long, it's been the opposite. And so now it does feel like a reflection. We should you should be able to hit like the half without trying to make it.
Okay, yeah, just give me the real one.
Oh, that's interesting. Colorblind. Right. Stories. Because we use red stories. We don't have to like, because colorblind almost directly institutes that this person.
Which a lot of books are. Yeah.
So you could argue that would be scary, like a colorblind casting. is
Yeah, I
that it's a white story that has always been a white story, and that they're recasting to do that. Like if Ariel had started off as a black woman, or if we had used Mediterranean because that would make more sense than white.
Yeah,
That's-
yeah.
that's what-
Wait, the ancient actor for Prince, the same brothers who fell to
Wow.
I didn't know that. Yeah. I guess so.
I don't want.
Is that the only? Is that the only?
He looks kind of fine.
What about the guy in
Did you
Crazy
know
Rich Asians?
that the- Wait, what?
Is the guy from Crazy Rich Asians from Singapore?
I don't know.
He looks like he's 45.
Don't do this.
No, he's not. He's objectively good looking.
I think he's objectively good looking.
He's old and crusty.
Just because you're old doesn't mean you're not good looking.
No.
Yeah,
you
it's
can-
You guys like Andrew Garfield.
Last Dragon. It's like, everyone thought the dad was so hot, right? The Last Dragon, and he was old, so.
Okay, well, no,
No.
remember that one day with Ella, how I was talking about how she likes old men, and she came in class after being at home.
Yeah,
through Zoom,
yeah.
like argue.
To argue with you.
Yeah, hey,
I
she has a point. There can be old guys that are like, ugh, super hot, like dad, like. But it's like,
Word I have had my dad.
there's like the difference between old and like nice. He is crusty, oh my god. Let me pull it up, let me pull it
He's
up.
literally
Okay.
like 22 in the movie.
So you've read, sorry, that was distracting. You've read a good amount now, right? It's okay if you didn't read the whole thing. I want you now to find, and you can discuss this with partner. We're gonna do it for the first one first. Find where they address the counter argument. So you are looking for anywhere in the essay where this writer, Maya Phillips, is talking about the benefits of colorblind casting, right? That would be the counter argument for her. So find anywhere where she's doing that, you mark it, and it's okay for this partner group. And then you're gonna answer these two questions. I guess it's kind of 4 questions, 2 main questions. So,
Look at this guy, look, ew, he's not cute. He's not cute, he's not cute though.
Wait,
He was actually, okay, what about sending you?
So again, on the actual paper, you're marking where that counter argument is. I'm gonna give you 5 minutes to mark it and then talk about these 2 things.
This is him, but it's just like, it's kind of, okay, I think my problem with him is that he looks too natural.
That's a problem for you.
Well, like,
That's all right.
Also, his wife, like the girl, was also really hot. But it's really hard because I watch her in this other show where she's above her grade. So it's like it came out before that show.
What show is that?
Fresh off the boat.
Oh, right.
So funny.
Yeah.
I used to love that show.
Yeah, he does.
But it's like, because she's like a hard A, like Chinese mom that's like, yeah. Also, that was another good example because Randall Park is Korean, but he plays a Chinese guy in that movie. Like, and it's really hard for me because I've grown up with Koreans all my life, and I'm like, you're not Chinese. Why is he pretending to be Chinese? Like I can tell.
Yeah.
The white boy can tell that he's not the right.
We don't want to expand that.
My mom has a hard time with it. It's just like all these kids are different races. Like if you look at the kids, they aren't all. So it's like it's almost like it almost brings it up again. So it's like this is and it's even like a story like it's from that kid's perspective. It's his autobiography. And they cast a different kind of Asian.
That's interesting.
Because it's like there's a difference between casting someone who's Dutch and Irish and Scottish and like someone who is different insular.
Right.
That might be a point.
There's a Maori guy.
Oh, are you talking about? I love him.
Yeah.
I remember his name. He did the Thor movies. Yeah, I love him. He's so funny. But it's
No, you're talking about.
Yeah,
Taika
Taika
Waititi.
Waititi. It's not Taika
I know you're
Waititi.
somebody else. It's like a character actor. Like every.
Oh, how should I?
I would.
That might be it.
So he's, I mean, he
No,
looks,
no.
he looks white, but.
He's white, yeah, no, who am I talking about? Hang on.
But he was in Moana, and they said Moana was an all-Islander cast, so then I thought, was Alan Tudyk actually something else? But he's been in every single Disney movie, he's a character actor.
Like,
He's been in every Disney movie since. like,
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's supposed to be animals and animals portray.
It's this guy. Cliff Curtis is his name. You might recognize him.
I don't like this sort of face. That's the thing I don't like about it. And not because, no, I rephrase my masculinity. He doesn't look soft. Like, I rephrase that. Soft. You know what I mean?
It's not Filipino.
No, it's this guy, Cliff Curtis. He's up here on the board.
I think if they're going to change something, if they're making a live action.
Simile, I can't remember his name.
It's this guy. If you've ever seen him before, he's played like every race.
Is he like the one with the Narcos guy right there?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Anyway.
See, I think it's like another point if you can at least read the part, like, that's one thing. But I don't think that it should be. It's very.
Okay, did you mark where the counter arguments were?
Well, here's the problem.
Okay, what I want you to notice there, because this is something I'm trying to get you to do in your own writing a lot, and I'm still feeling resistance about it. Do you see how much space that she actually gives to the counter arguments? She has full paragraphs that are completely in favor of the counter argument, right? And yet it doesn't hurt her own argument because she has transitions that then go into why, yeah, that might be the case sometimes, but it's more often the case that I am right, you know? So it's okay to have these like full paragraphs where she is acknowledging what the other side says. That doesn't hurt her own point of view, it just adds complexity to her point of view. All right, I'm gonna give you an article now that's in favor of colorblind casting. It's much longer, so you're just gonna read the first part.
This girl's spitting.
Philippines is only number 2 most attractive Asian country, by the way, Ali Rose.
What?
Number 1 is Thailand.
Wait.
Says Google.
Go back to what you just said. Wait, say what you just said.
It said according to Google, Philippines is only the 2nd most attractive Asian country.
Actually, well, yeah.
You're wrong.
I don't know why, like, for China to have like millions of people, like, there's no way they're not number 1, but they're not even on the list.
All right, give me 3 minutes of silence. While you get as far as you can reading this purple one. Again, you're not gonna be able to read the whole thing. Just read for 3 minutes, and again, as you're going, mark where she talks about the counter argument, which is gonna be the negative sides of colorblind casting.
You hate this article? Yeah, that's all right. All right, go to the very last paragraph. Read the very last paragraph.
Yeah, John Turturro, my gosh, the Batman. Also, I've seen, Roger Rabbit,
Yeah, he's great.
or, Mr. Eats.
Oh, it's been a long time since I saw that. Oh, yeah. Okay, so reading that very last paragraph too, because I want to make sure we understand the argument that they're making.
She's all over the place.
That Graham, I think it's a man.
Oh, man, she's all over the place.
This is impossible issue. There's no good answer.
It's impossible.
It's impossible.
Actually, there is, we'd have to give up all prejudice right now.
Okay, so now that you've read that very last paragraph, right? Everyone read that?
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you 1 minute of silence to make sure everyone reads that very last paragraph. Okay, I think we discovered in our discussion that there are more than two sides to this issue, but I did try to find somebody that was arguing on kind of two sides of the issue. So again, just I want you to talk with the person next to you about where the counter argument is and why they devote that much space to that counter argument.
Yeah.
They're basically
So they're saying, like, they are saying,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's one of the things that they allow.
But then it's like, but that works.
Like, people are only 12%. I thought it was so much higher, we're like 40%.
Yeah.
What the heck?
He's a. I'm not great with Southeastern Asian.
All right. So we're gonna move on to the writing portion of today now.
Don't we have to finish what we were doing last time?
I decided not to.
We're just dumb.
Do we just do that?
I'll explain.
Oh, no, you're gonna be a blind paper.
I fear that. Yeah. No, I understand that.
I was struggling so bad this day, that was so weird.
I feel like you said it's Friday for the same thing.
A little bit. We spent a lot of time. All right, let me get your attention. Hey, you have gotten tons of information now from your classmates and from these sources.
So I want you to answer this question in a topic sentence, just at the first lines of that white page I just gave you. What is one effect? You can go either positive or negative, but you're narrowing it. You're narrowing it to be one effect of colorblind casting, and that could be on the story, or that could be on the industry, like on sort of Hollywood or on, Broadway. What is the one effect? Okay, so you're gonna write your topic sentence. And then you're going to go back to the articles and you're going to start with, the one that supports you. And you're gonna underline the sentence that supports it. Then you're gonna go to the other article and you're going to find one sentence that refutes your point of view. And again, you're looking for something about that one specific thing. And then this last bit, you're gonna write a paragraph that incorporates both of them. So you can do that by even combining them into the same sentence if you want. If that is awkward, then don't bother with that. But I kind of gave you some frames here to help. Although Phillips argues that colorblind casting is harmful for these reasons, Graham, that's his last name, argues for this point, and I am with Graham, So you're showing the way that the sources compare and contrast on this issue, and then you're clarifying what your position is ultimately. So in one paragraph, you start with your point of view, you elaborate on your point of view, same paragraph structure as we always use. So your argument for the paragraph, topic sentence, and then your elaboration of your argument, and then your use of sources, your evidence, but for this one, it's going to be at least 2, right? We only have 2. And then analysis, where you clarify your position. And this is what we're gonna call putting the sources in conversation with each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So although Maya Phillips argues that colorblind casting does not pay attention to lived experience, I put that part in quotations, Graham, what's his name, argues that an actor should be able to transcend lived experience. And I say Graham is the right one. You can have a weird little mix of what your point of view is, yeah. Yeah. Oh, as an it's based on. Yeah. Okay, so you guys, we're gonna take 10, 15 minutes now to write these paragraphs. So everyone's focusing and quiet. Okay.
Good job.
Tomato wasn't actually made by tomato. Yeah.
You know, I was like, I looked at this. and how it's essential that I saw it. I know that.
Yeah.
What if yours is only a line of people?
Then you can find small parts in the article that have something to do with your argument.
But what if they, but if you say like that, how do you do this?
What is your argument you want me to do?
Colorblind casting would really change the story, either allowing for talent.
I didn't hear the first part. Like the.
Colorblind casting can completely change the story, either allowing for talent to do things.
I think the problem is that you're trying to have your cake and eat it too. You're saying that colorblind casting is both good and bad and has two different effects. Try and narrow it. It changes the story. Is that a bad thing or a good thing? But you're only writing one paragraph, so it might depend in your thesis statement, but in this one paragraph, it doesn't have to show one side. Yeah.
That'd be like some pieces.
Yours would be a thesis. And you're one of the topics. that would be way more
And so am I
narrow.
trying to make this one of my counter argument paragraphs or just one of my paragraphs?
One of your paragraphs.
But that's just like one
Acknowledges.
paragraph acknowledgement.
Yes. No, the topic is acknowledges.
Well, I just go to good pieces. Everyone gets,
And so I, at the same time.
then I have to decide.
So that's what I feel like, I feel like at least elaboration and to me, it's almost like a correction, that's like. So in my head, like the current idea, sure, the world is problem. We could get to the point where it's that they would have to be okay with, like Russell Crowe, like that.
So I think for your topic.
So I kind of wrote that, I'm like. I thought that was what I was supposed to do, but I don't know.
That's sort of like. So elaborate. So that is. Sounds like
I can see it right there, 'cause I'm like, I was like, people were like, I can't believe because it's black.
No, that's not what you're saying.
I just wanted to check down. Whoever catches this.
Okay, let me get you to refocus.
that you can focus on your paragraph. But let me ask you a question. Is there like complete confusion about what you're supposed to be doing right now?
No, this is so hard.
I am going to, so take a picture of this because it's going away. Love that. Everyone just had it like 2 seconds and you had your phone. Yeah, good one. All right. Sorry, that's what my grandma says. Good one.
I thought you liked to believe us. You were like, yeah.
Good one. Good one, old sport. All right. So I'm going to write this up here. If I had to do this assignment, I have not chosen my position because that's too hard and I made you do it. All right. One effect of colorblind casting is that it can be 1 or 2. Benefits white people more than people of color. Okay, so maybe my position overall is anti-colorblind casting because I think white people will abuse it. No, that's too narrow. I'm gonna steal Noah's argument because it's too focused on racial identity as real and not performative. Okay. So maybe that's my thesis, right? But in this paragraph, I am not supporting my entire argument about colorblind casting. You can't do that in a paragraph. So all I want to focus on in my paragraph that I'm writing is one specific effect that I think it has. So I think it has that it benefits white people more than people of color. Okay, so then I'm going to elaborate on that. Maybe I'll mention some other movies that I've seen that has done that. What? Hidden Figures doesn't do that.
Fresh off the
No,
boat.
all I was thinking about is like the white guy, the white savior. You know, like, they savior, like,
Yeah, but that's a different issue. So I'm going to say, hang on. So in Hollywood, there have been many examples of characters who were culturally or racially marked. That's not the right word. Yeah, this is where I'm doing elaboration. That have been played by white actors. Famously, Emma Stone played a character who was meant to be of half Japanese descent. This character was meant to, yeah, this character was meant, let me say, in the book, descendants, this character's ethnicity played a part. That's not what I would say. It's an idiom and I would go back and fix that. But this character played an important part in the way she made decisions and interacted with other characters. Played an important part. I don't like that. So then I'm going to get into my sources. So there's my elaboration. I just sort of explained what I meant, right? So then I'm going to get into my sources. I'm going to say, as Maya Phillips wrote in the New York Times, colorblind casting more often excludes performers of color. Though Graham Dacler, where does he say that, Maxwell? That'll help me.
Page 3 at the top, it says, It implicitly favors people of color. such as
Awesome. Perfect.
Like,
Go back to black and white. Yeah. Or no, we can do, yeah, we did all the animated portraits.
Okay. So here, I did this in a hurry, so be kind, but I've showed the way that the two sources are kind of interacting. So with Maxwell's help, as Maya Phillips wrote in the New York Times, colorblind casting more often excludes performers of color. Though Graham Daisler argues that this practice implicitly favors people of color, both he and Phillips also list many white actors who have played people of color. I should probably vary my use of that term, which is very repetitive, but in an effort to gain box office rewards. I'm going to go on now and talk about why I favor Maya Phillips' position over Graham Daisler's. So I'm going to say stuff about, yes, exactly. But the reason that it's okay that it has a little counter argument in it is that my topic sentence is still my point of view. I'm still going to stick with my point of view throughout the paragraph. It's just that I'm going to show, I'm going to acknowledge that different sources say different things. Okay, does that make sense now? Better?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you got 10 more minutes. No, 8 more minutes to finish it. Okay, what do you mean? Got it. Okay, yeah, got it. So then that's kind of your thesis, right? And it's kind of broad. So then you want to narrow it down to just your topic sentence, and that's where you have one effect of what happened when it is used for this. So let's say that you could say, you could look at it either way. What is an effect on a white person casting a black hole? Or what's an effect on a black person casting a white hole? So have some specific effect that could happen, like you'll get historical inaccuracy. Or people are upset because their lived experience is
No way to decide.
whatever. It's like this one effect. And from there, you elaborate on that.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Just about life. This one, where it just like is like, even like black, is that like a word that we could like use?
I don't like his use of it. I don't know what race brings. That's weird. That's a really weird thing to do, but I'm going to.
Really shouldn't have like black.
I don't think it's appropriate. In my understanding, it feels diminutive, like bad. I always say black people. But I also, you do capitalize black now. That's just changed in the past couple of years. Yeah, I'm not comfortable with it. There's something about it that feels.
Okay, because when I heard it, I was like, I feel like I don't know if that's like, because like,
But here it's okay. Black people.
yeah, like people of color, like majority of them are black, which is fine. Like that should be capitalized now, right? And then it'd be even though people in that culture or
I would say black people. And even if you say, if black people isn't derogatory, if you felt uncomfortable, you could say African American. More people now are.
I know, but like I said,
black with a capital P.
But when you do it this way, it feels a little.
It's like saying like JS, like, you know.
We don't say white people, like white people, like,
Yeah.
yeah. So. And honestly, I think this article is like, and so it makes sense.
Oh, okay.
But,
I wasn't
like he's basically saying, there's blackface is more complex than people give it credit for. But his point is that it's not the race of the actor that makes a character racist, it's the character himself. And so it shouldn't matter what race.
So
people
this one's
play.
arguing that it shouldn't matter what race.
Yeah, it's arguing for colorblind casting.
Regretting that.
And that's, and Goldthwait saying that it could be a white person, but a black person, black person, and a white person.
Like this one, like most of the Friday said should be forcefully behind that racial.
This writer spends a lot of time.
So
And right there,
that's a
he's-
count, right?
Right there, he's talking about.
Got it. Okay, so I read that and I was like, but isn't that the other?
Yeah, so because then in the next paragraph, he's like Sidney Poitier, who is like one of the most famous black actors ever. He says here that he didn't want to be known as just a black actor.
And this whole paragraph too is a count, right?
Yeah, so he's kind of saying that actors should be able to transcend race.
I want your honest opinion.
I think overwhelmingly represented is a strange phrase, like I think you could work on the grammar there.
Yeah, probably. I thought that too when I read that. I just meant like now is.
Yeah. Be more specific there too, with the problems, like what exact problems?
I just.
Yeah, but I mean, what I meant is like problems with historical inaccuracies.
Oh,
problems with,
okay.
Like,
I can say,
yeah,
I can say that.
this is
because
the
I wanted
example
to
of
get-
the problem, but
You just
yeah.
want like the example, you want the word problem to be more specific.
Yeah.
But like, where's 30 seconds?
Okay, the only thing is I don't see the sources.
I didn't use these ones yet.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because we talked about Hamilton and both of them, so I
Yep.
didn't know how I wanted to quote that.
I think it's great for your own argument, and then when you're doing the synthesis, you've got to plug in some of the sources to back it up. Yeah, as an argument paragraph, it's very good. And I think you could find places where they're talking about Hamilton and put that right up here when you're describing what the problems are.
Okay, so I'll just. I was like, they're both quoting Hamilton, and Hamilton is the source itself, so I was like.
Yeah, I would use them as secondary, so use their commentary on Hamilton as the source.
What I think I need to do is that I
Yes, so in a paragraph, you've got to have it be narrow enough, to fully explain it and justify it in that paragraph.
That's just how I am. I always do that. I always.
So go back and think, what is one either limit or benefit that you get from colorblind casting? And write the paragraph just about one of those. That's for the topic sentence,
Yes.
more specific. Yes, so could you say it's problematic, which that could mean every problem ever, right?
Then we get into the conversation.
And then you've got depends on the intentions. Intentions could be any intention, right? And actions, actors, they could be any of the actors. Does that make sense? So it's very broad. Basically, it'd be like, if I said, what do you think of colorblind casting? And you said, well, it depends. And that's your answer. And I'd be like, okay, but what do you think of colorblind casting, you know? And so that's why I asked that question about effect, like what could one effect be? You don't have to prove your full argument in this paragraph about the positive and negatives. The paper could be about that, but just for this paragraph, you're thinking about like either one positive or one negative. So like one positive effect might be more people of color in Hollywood get work. Or one negative effect could be the story changes too much and people don't know. People are confused.
And then, wait, so you put quotes in yours. I thought you were
Yes.
supposed to do quotes.
In synthesis, we're supposed to do short quotes,
Like even in the topics?
not in the topic sentence. I don't have it in the topic sentence.
Yeah, you do.
This is my topic.
Or, I mean, the topic paragraph.
Oh, no, this is not, the topic. We're not writing an intro paragraph. We're just writing an argument. Yeah. Okay. Yes, very good. Yeah. Perfect. Okay, yes. You do such a good job. Short little bits that are embedded in your writing.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Mara. Thank you.
Oh, turn in your paragraphs before you go.
Pardon?
Yeah,
Okay.
turn in your paragraph into the drawer. That means if you weren't working on it, you didn't get the points.
I have this.
I want yours so there's either, if I start you're not writing the full essay. I want you to write down, I want the intro and the first one.
I definitely forgot to cite my quote.
And that's it.
Parker rated test.
I know people who just have already.
But yes, we'll do it for sure. Okay. So yes, the only thing would be that you would write a little bit more
Yeah, thank you.
where you explain it.
Okay, and that's it.
Yep. Will you turn that? Thanks.
It's just, you can't see where you're going.
Okay, I really hope you guys were able to hear that. If not, you can just, the on the screen right now, it's awkward. All right, thanks. Just turn in what you got, you're good. Thank you. Just do what it says on the PowerPoint and just write your own thoughts on it. If you can't hear the class discussion, then skip to when I'm giving more instructions. If you have any questions, you let me know.